Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of colors, and please remain standing for the playing of our national anthem and invocation. Color Guard, parade the colors. Color Guard, retire the colors.
Order, arms. March side, march. Left wheel, march. Forward, march.
Chaplain Riley will now deliver the invocation.
Let us pray. Eternal Father, strong to save, ever-present source of all our days, and especially today, as we pause in the excitement of this commencement to offer up this prayer, may we turn our minds and our hearts to you in this moment. Thank you for the wisdom that you have given, wisdom that is the ultimate source of all learning and inspiration. We stand here, each one from a great diversity of peoples and nations, representing the best in effort and achievement, united in study and common cause, eager to apply that knowledge in service. Be especially near to those who continue day in and day out to serve in places of danger. May your grace rest upon those healing in heart and mind, spirit and body from the tragedy at our own Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. Such sacrifice places all we do and why we do it in perspective. Let this short space of time in which we honor the achievement of each graduate be remembered and nurtured in mind and spirit as they go forth and accomplish what you set before them to do. Help them at last to do this with boldness and with confidence. I ask this now in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to the Naval Postgraduate School Summer Quarter Graduation. I'd like to begin this morning's ceremony by thanking the Del Monte Brass and the Naval Postgraduate School Color Guard. The men and women sharing the stage with President Tai and Vice Admiral Hunt today are deans of our various schools, distinguished professors, and our local area military leadership. They have all been deeply involved in the education of today's graduates. At this time, I'm honored to introduce our President, Rear Admiral Jan Tai.
Good morning. Distinguished guests, faculty and staff, family and friends, and soon-to-be graduates, we welcome you to today's graduation ceremony. Before I introduce our guest speaker, there are a few groups of people I would like to recognize. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge our faculty and staff that made this graduation possible. Your passion and commitment to this institution and our students is profound and very appreciated. Because of you, the Naval Postgraduate School is graduating another class of well-educated leaders who are capable of critical thinking, problem solving, and succeeding in performance at a much higher level than when they came to us. Thank you for these graduates and your service and dedication and support over the last 10 months to strengthen this institution. Second, I must recognize the family members of our graduates and friends at the ceremony today. You share in today's successes by being a part of our students' lives and supporting them to achieve their educational goals. Your role is often overlooked or understated, but today would not be possible without your sacrifice and love and support, so thank you very much. And finally, to today's graduates, we are all proud of you. Each of you has overcome and conquered academic challenges. Your education and experience have prepared you to become leaders who are at the forefront of resolving security challenges of our nation, your nation, and the global community. You will make a difference in keeping us all safe. For many of you, leaving Monterey may be bittersweet, whether you'll miss the beauty of the Central Coast and all that it has to offer when you are not studying, or you will miss being steeped in a rich academic environment that's allowed you to focus and think deep thoughts. Or perhaps you will miss the camaraderie that you have enjoyed with your fellow students. Leaving Monterey is always difficult. Trust me, I've had to do it many times. You can be justifiably proud of your accomplishments, and you will always have your memories and your education to lean upon. All of our graduates are special, But I'd like to let you know today that among our graduates are 2 civilian employees that worked in Building 197 on the Washington Navy Yard on 16 September. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Navy Yard families and friends during these difficult times. Today, we will also graduate our first crop of enlisted cyber warriors with a Master of Science in Applied Cyber Operations. It's my great privilege to bear witness to this first in cyber and NPS history. And now it's my privilege to introduce today's graduation speaker, Vice Admiral Richard W. Hunt. Vice Admiral Hunt graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1975 with a Bachelor's of Science in Bacteriology and was commissioned through OCS in Newport, Rhode Island. Then he went to sea again and again and again, and ultimately commanded a frigate, the USS Cromlin, a cruiser, the USS Philippine Sea, Carrier Strike Group 6, Combined Joint Task Force Horn of Africa, and the U.S. Third Fleet. He sailed the Atlantic, Pacific, Mediterranean, Indian Oceans, and into the Middle East. Ashore, he has served as the NROTC unit at Ohio State and in the Pentagon on multiple tours, 3 tours on the Joint Staff, as the Deputy Director of the J5, Executive Assistant to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and also serving on the staff of the J6 in his payback tour from NPS. He also had 3 tours on the Navy staff, including serving as an AD on OpNav staff, and most recently as the Director of the Navy staff. For those of you who have seen Lion King, you'll know what I say when I say, "Ooh, Mustafa." DNS. Okay. We'd like to think that Vice Admiral Hunt's most relevant credential to today's ceremony is the fact that he attended the Naval Postgraduate School, receiving a Master of Science in Telecommunications and Systems Management in 1988. But that would not be the case. His most relevant connection to today's ceremony is that he is the dad of Lieutenant Stephen Hunt, graduating today with an MS in Engineering Acoustics. So thanks to Stephen for letting us put Dad to work on your special day. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for Vice Admiral Rick Hunt.
Well, I might have come anyway, but it works out pretty good. Thank you, Admiral Ty, for that very kind introduction. I appreciate that. And welcome faculty, staff, distinguished guests, friends, family, and most importantly, our newest postgraduate school graduating class. What a great day and a wonderful event this is. Coming to Monterey, for those of us that live back in Washington, is always a treat. Doing so as an alumnus is very special. And as Admiral Ty said, even more so with my son in today's graduating class. Now, I would first like to acknowledge Admiral Ty and the terrific job that she has done as interim president for over the last year. She is and she's kind of been my counterpart as I've been director of naval staff here for the last year at the same time at the other end. She has been absolutely remarkable for the things that she's done in particularly challenging times. And I also offer that the support and professionalism of the entire NPS staff and faculty during this period has ensured that the Naval Postgraduate School continues to excel as one of our nation's leading higher education institutions. Thank you, Jan, for your leadership. It's been 25 years since I was a student here. Long time. The world has changed, our nation has changed, and our military has changed dramatically. Gone is the bipolar world of the Cold War, the worries of the Fulda Gap, and the ever-looming fear of nuclear annihilation. As challenging as we thought those days were, in hindsight, this provided a degree of certainty and clear direction, one in which we were able to create with confidence a highly capable military to deal with those specific threats. Today's challenges, those challenges that you will face, are much more complex. They are multidimensional and unpredictable, and they continue to be even more disruptive than those in earlier times. The following are the challenges today, which each of you will face as you return to the fleet. They are many and they are complex. First, we still have nations with goals at odds with our own, possessing high-end warfighting capability and the resourcing to provide global challenges, the peer competitors. And there are several lesser capable but equally disruptive nations with sophisticated weapons that challenge our ability to operate freely. Second, there are transnational terrorists that strike throughout the world. Some even include weapons of mass destruction in their inventory. All must be dealt with seriously. Third, there are many areas where we experience illegal activity in ungoverned water space. This includes illegal fishing activity, resource exploitation, human and drug trafficking, illegal weapon shipments, and piracy. Our firm and focused action is necessary to ensure our national security and the security across the globe. Perhaps even more difficult than these individual challenges is that of uncertainty itself. Uncertainty including not only external threats, but also internal challenges like sequestration, resourcing reductions, national politics, like the impending government shutdown, all with huge impacts that we must deal with to continue to provide security for our nation. To deal effectively with this uncertainty, we must first clearly understand the events and their causes. Second, be prepared to rapidly adapt and adjust where necessary. And finally, we must be able to execute the necessary changes quickly and efficiently. The greatest benefit the Naval Postgraduate School provides our Navy and our nation is you. It is your education and the experiences here in Monterey that have prepared you to lead our actions to meet these threats. Technical skills developed in the classrooms and laboratories, diversity of thought that has been enhanced by the exchange of information and discussions with fellow professors, students, and outside speakers, all with various backgrounds and differing approaches to problem solving. The introduction of our first 4 enlisted students in the information dominance field has not only provided a superb education for each of them, but has enriched fellow students working side by side. Time for critical thinking has allowed the development of problem-solving approaches that will be carried forward through the rest of your careers. As future leaders of our Navy and other fields, you are now better prepared and several steps ahead of your peers. We are entering a decade, or perhaps 2, where our national security will center on the sea services, the Navy in particular. As the ground war in the Middle East comes to close, the Navy will become key to the U.S. security efforts forward. We will provide forward presence and therefore influence, and will provide rapid expeditionary response when necessary, first to respond and hopefully deal with the events without the necessity of using excessive force. The knowledge you have gained here at NPS has greatly contributed to the development of your ability to deal with these new challenges, and as a result will contribute to our mission accomplishment as each of you becomes more senior. While we currently have a significant naval advantage, the gap is closing and requires us to develop new capabilities to maintain our advantage in the future. Many of you have studied the development of exactly those capabilities to maintain this technological advantage. Threats requiring ballistic missile defense, improved undersea warfare technology, energy weapons including lasers and railgun, long-range surface-to-surface weapons and sensors, unmanned systems in the air, on the sea, or underwater, and of course, cyber technology. Understanding how our adversaries think is equally important, and in fact, this is much harder than simply matching weapon system to weapon system. The information must come from observation, study, and interaction. The doors to accomplish this open here at NPS. You have been afforded the opportunity to understand the world around you and to develop methods to effectively and boldly move forward. To further compound this problem, we must deal with the end-of-decade-long fiscal increases and adjust to the realities of sequestration and significant budget reductions. Force structure, readiness levels, personnel decisions must be critically reviewed and developed into a vision for the future. Which technologies to invest in and where to hold the line and save money are key to our future. Simply attempting to continue to function as we currently do with less resources is flawed and will leave us at greater risk. We must develop new methods and approaches to develop necessary effects with the resourcing that we have. These choices are extremely complex. As money gets tighter, the need for critical thinking becomes all the more important. Your insight and recommendations are essential. You are ready to provide good, sound recommendations. Additionally, information explosion in the ever-expanding cyber domain demands our focus and continuing to strive to understand the new challenges. Simply stated, technology continues to explode at an ever-increasing pace, and we must stay ahead of this change. This may be the most critical area of this era. Many of you have just become as current and as skilled as one can possibly get in these highly demanding technical areas. I believe our current strategic environment is the most complex and dangerous that our nation has ever faced. Again, it is you that we are counting on to understand these challenges, to identify and analyze courses of action, and to provide wisdom and leadership to guide us through it. It is this complexity that requires us to tap into the experience of every degree awarded here today. When I attended NPS, many were quick to advocate that their curriculum was better or more important than others. I offer that in today's environment, we now require each and every area offered here in Monterey to be used together. It is the blending of these diverse backgrounds that enable us to stay ahead of our opposition. Engineering, business, cultural understanding, cyber, science, all working together to allow us to integrate, innovate, and adapt as we move ahead. We need our best and our brightest to aggressively lead us through these issues, and this is exactly what your education here at NPS has developed, by providing the tools to enable you to meet these demands and to execute. It is the reason we have invested so much in your education. You asked questions, you pursued ideas away from conventional wisdom, and you were challenged to think across the spectrum of possibilities. By design or by your own desires, you explored and developed interest in totally new areas. You've been in a great place, thinking, reading, and writing, challenged with academic rigor that makes you special. Your professors and classmates have provided a richness and diversity of thought. Different communities, different services, interagency members, and multinational classmates. You now think differently than those without this education, and that is good. Naval Postgraduate School is a world-class institution with world-class faculty and top officers from nations around the globe. Remember to use the relationships that you've developed here and continue to network as you move forward in your career. Just a short comment on my class to put things in perspective. My telecommunications class contains 17 U.S. military students. Currently, 3 of those are still on active duty serving as flag officers, and the rest are either active captains or colonels or retired 06s. Believe me, you guys are all on a good course. Feel comfortable in that, take advantage of that. I truly believe that I have used some aspect of my NPS education every day in every assignment that I've had. In my operational jobs at sea, my Pentagon tours both on Navy staff and Joint Staff, and on the ground in Horn of Africa conducting theater security cooperation and counterterrorism operations. Now, I view today as much more than a graduation. It's not the end of your NPS experience, but simply the beginning of the next phase in your career. As you move on to your next assignments, I ask that each of you consciously think about applying your Monterey gained tools. Continue to study broadly. Enrich your personal level of knowledge, including areas out of that of your expertise. Take time to think critically and to develop new approaches to the new challenges. Be passionate in your work. Use what you have learned to push the envelope and to think outside of the box. And finally, be unafraid to act boldly. You have developed great talent here at Naval Postgraduate School. Ensure that you use that talent. Remember also to view NPS as a center of excellence and tap into it whenever you see advantage in doing so. It is important that you continue to use the resources here at NPS so that we can continue to demonstrate its great value to our Navy. It is only through aggressive, dedicated, forward-leaning professionals that we will be able to successfully lead our nation through the challenges that I addressed in the beginning. Be proud of what you have accomplished and boldly advance it to the next level. You are our future leaders, and we are counting on you to do just that. Lead aggressively. Congratulations to each of you, and welcome to opportunity. In closing, I'd like to thank each of you for your investment in time. Your nation and our military will be richer for it, but it is now up to you to utilize and to exploit those skills that you've attained to help surmount the challenges that we face. I offer my thanks also to your families for supporting you. I know that without them, you could not do this. My deepest gratitude and appreciation goes to the NPS faculty and staff for the unequaled education that you have provided. Your hard work and commitment have been inspiring. Thank you. And lastly, Admiral Ty, thank you for allowing me to spend some wonderful time with these NPS graduates, share a few ideas, and let's deliver a few degrees. Thanks.
I'd now like to invite President Ty and Provost Hensler forward for the presentation of the Richard W. Hamming Teaching Award. A little background on this award. Richard Hamming's widow, Mrs. Wanda Hamming, along with his colleagues, have provided the NPS Foundation with the means to fund this annual award. Mrs. Hamming's late husband, a world-renowned scientist, was a faculty member at Naval Postgraduate School. Today's recipient of the award is Dr. Ronald Fricker, Jr. from the Department of Operations Research. Ronald D. Fricker, Jr. is a professor in the Operations Research Department. He holds a PhD and Master of Science in Statistics from Yale University, an MS in Operations Research from the George Washington University, and a bachelor's degree from the United States Naval Academy. Professor Fricker is a fellow of the American Statistical Association and a former chair of the Section on Statistics in Defense and National Security and the Committee on Statisticians in Defense of National Security. Congratulations, Dr. Fricker. Will the candidates for the degree, Doctor of Philosophy, please stand and proceed to a platform?
You have water right here if you need.
Will Colonel Michael Finzel, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Security Studies, please cross the stage? The title of Colonel Finzel's dissertation is No Retreat, the Failure of Soviet Decision-Making in the Afghan War, 1979 to 1989. Colonel Finzel's dissertation advisor is Professor Daniel Moran from the Department of National Security Affairs. Colonel Finzel's dissertation examines the decisions that led to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, governed the conduct of the war, and contributed to its ultimate strategic failure. His work focuses on the politics of the Politburo before and during the Afghan war and on the way political decision-making at the highest levels of the Soviet state shaped the war's origins, conduct, and outcome. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Colonel Fenzel. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Commander John Sheehan, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Security Studies, please cross the stage. The title of Commander Sheehan's dissertation is Imperial Senate, American Legislative Debates on Empire, 1898 to 1917. Commander Sheehan's dissertation advisor is Professor Daniel Moran from the Department of National Security Affairs. Commander Sheehan's dissertation explored the debates and decisions of the United States Senate in the era following the Spanish-American War. His work balances the interaction between domestic politics and international relations as senators debated the acquisition, administration, and eventual abandonment of empire. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Commander Sheehan. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Commander Bradford Baker, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Mechanical Engineering, please cross the stage. The title of Commander Baker's dissertation is Processing, Microstructure, and Material Property Relationships Following Friction Stir Welding of Oxide Dispersion Strengthened Steels. Commander Baker's dissertation advisor is Professor Luke Brewer from the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. Commander Baker researched the processing, microstructure, and material property relationships of oxide dispersion strengthened steels joined by friction stir welding as part of the materials research program for fusion energy applications by the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Commander Baker. He has completed all the requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Lieutenant Commander Chen Yu Quan, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Modeling, Virtual Environments, and Simulation, please cross the stage. The title of Lieutenant Commander Chen's dissertation is Hybrid Architectural Framework for C4ISR and Discrete Event Simulation to Demonstrate Sensor-Driven Model Synthesis in Real-World Scenarios. Lieutenant Commander Chen's dissertation co-advisors are Associate Professor Don Brutzman from the Department of Information Sciences and Professor Phil Pace from the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Lieutenant Commander Chen's dissertation presents a hybrid architecture framework for command and control systems with discrete event simulation supporting sensor-driven model synthesis. It is a cross-disciplinary effort that holds great promise for future command and control capabilities in real-world scenarios. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Lieutenant Commander Chen. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Major Jesse Peets, the candidate for degree Doctor of Philosophy in Operations Research, please cross the stage. The title of Major Peets' dissertation is A Generalized Orienteering for Optimal Search and Interdiction Planning. Major Peets' dissertation advisor is Professor Johannes O. Royset from the Department of Operations Research. Major Peets' dissertation supports search and interdiction planning for counter-drug operations by introducing a generalized orienteering problem where transit on arcs in a network and reward collection at nodes both consume a variable amount of the same limited resource. His work presents 6 search models and 5 algorithms that give practitioners the capability to compute optimal and near-optimal plans for real-world scenarios. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Major Peets. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Lieutenant Colonel Jack Evans, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Meteorology, please cross the stage? The title of Lieutenant Colonel Evans' dissertation is Determining Snow Depth Using Airborne Multipass Interferometric Synthetic Aperture Radar. Lieutenant Colonel Evans' dissertation advisor is Professor Fred Cruzy from the Department of Physics. Lieutenant Colonel Evans' dissertation developed a new intelligence gathering technique using airborne multipass interferometric synthetic aperture radar to generate digital elevation models for both snow-on and snow-off conditions that were then differenced to determine snow depth in difficult-to-reach locations. This new capability acts as a force multiplier for DoD and humanitarian missions to include insertion and extraction operations, determination of trafficability for mounted and dismounted operations, numerical meteorological and climatological modeling, hydrological forecasting, avalanche risk assessment, flood forecast, and agricultural impacts. I hope you all got that. There will be a quiz. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Lieutenant Colonel Evans. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Major Paul Homan, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Meteorology, please cross the stage? The title of Major Homan's dissertation is Ensemble Sensitivity Analysis of a Severe Downslope Windstorm in Complex Terrain, Implications for Forecast Predictability Scales and Target Observing Networks. Major Homan's dissertation advisor is Professor Joshua Hacker from the Department of Meteorology. In Major Homan's research, multiple mesoscale numerical weather simulations are conducted to evaluate whether ensemble sensitivity analysis is a useful tool determining the sensitivity of severe downslope windstorm in complex terrain to initial conditions and assimilated observations. Results suggest that ensemble sensitivity analysis is a viable method to identify observation locations to improve forecasts of fine-scale, nonlinear, high-impact events such as downslope windstorms. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Major Homan. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Mr. Andrew Penny, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Meteorology, please cross the stage? The title of Mr. Penny's dissertation is Observations and High-Resolution Numerical Simulations of a Non-Developing Tropical Disturbance in the Western North Pacific. Mr. Penny's dissertation advisor is Professor Patrick Haar from the Department of Meteorology. To help address the question of why so few convective disturbances actually develop into tropical cyclones, Mr. Penny's dissertation examines a non-developing tropical disturbance in the western North Pacific using in situ aircraft observations. His study employed high-resolution numerical simulations and data assimilation to examine the impacts on the mesoscale structure of the circulation and the nature of the precipitation processes. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Mr. Penny. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Commander Micah Weltmer, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Physical Oceanography, please cross the stage? The title of Commander Weltmer's dissertation is Observation and Simulation of Stratified Fronts in Well-Mixed Estuaries. Commander Weltmer's dissertation advisor is Professor Jamie McMahon from the Department of Oceanography. Commander Weltmer's dissertation work coupled hydrodynamic models with field measurements to describe a new hybrid type of subduction front in a vertically well-mixed estuary with complicated morphology, where such stratified features are thought rarely to occur. In addition to expanding the assumption set for the fundamental estuarine classification scheme, this discovery resulted in development and validation of innovative methods for predicting front location that will benefit both environmental reconnaissance efforts and waterway management planning. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Commander Weltmer. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Major Jong Chung, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Mathematics, please cross the stage? The title of Major Chung's dissertation is Affine Equivalence and Constructions of Cryptographically Strong Boolean Functions. Major Chung's dissertation advisor is Professor Pante Stanica from the Department of Applied Mathematics. Major Chung's dissertation addresses a type of affine equivalence for the monomial rotation symmetric Boolean functions and two new construction techniques for cryptographic Boolean functions based on the affine equivalence of cryptographically strong base functions and fast Boolean operations. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Major Chung. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will Mr. Brian Kearney, the candidate for the degree Doctor of Philosophy in Applied Physics, please cross the stage? The title of Mr. Kearney's dissertation, Enhancing Microbolometer Performance at Terahertz Frequencies with Metamaterial Absorbers. Mr. Kearney's dissertation advisor is Professor Gamani Karunasiri from the Department of Physics. In Mr. Kearney's dissertation, a high-sensitivity terahertz sensor with an integrated metamaterial absorber was demonstrated. Potential applications of the sensor include detection of concealed objects and explosives. Rear Admiral Tai, I present to you Mr. Kearney. He has completed all requirements prescribed by the faculty and is recommended for the degree Doctor of Philosophy.
By the authority vested in me, I confer upon you the degree Doctor of Philosophy, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will the candidate for the engineer's degree please stand and proceed to the platform?
The engineer's degree is a degree that is intermediate between a master's degree and a Doctor of Philosophy. It requires more courses than a master's degree, and the student spends more time in the thesis investigation, probing deeper into research than for a master's thesis. President Tai, I present to you this candidate. After consideration of his academic accomplishments, the Academic Council will recommend him for the degree Electrical Engineer as specified.
Upon the recommendation of the Academic Council, I will, by the authority vested in me, confer upon him the degree Electrical Engineer as specified, with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Candidate for the degree Electrical Engineer, Lieutenant J.G. Ioannis Milanis, Hellenic Navy, also received the degree Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. Will the candidates for the degrees Master of Arts, Master of Science, Master of Business Administration, and Executive Master of Business Administration please stand?
President Tai, I present to you these candidates. After consideration of their academic accomplishments, The Academic Council will recommend them for the degree Master of Arts, Master of Science, Master of Business Administration, and Executive Master of Business Administration as specified.
Upon the recommendation of the Academic Council, I will, by the authority vested in me, confer upon them the degree Master of Arts, Master of Science, Master of Business Administration, and Executive Master of Business Administration as specified, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities thereunto pertaining.
Will the candidates please proceed to the platform, and the remaining graduates please be seated. Of this quarter's total 400 graduating class, 99 have also earned the Command and Staff Diploma from the Joint Professional Military Education Program sponsored by the Naval War College. This is annotated in the graduation program with a star adjacent to the student's name. Candidates for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Middle East, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, Major William R. Daniel II, U.S. Army. Major Kelly Skurdland, U.S. Army. Lieutenant Commander Mark C. David. Lieutenant Commander Scott Temester also received 2 awards, the Hans Jones Awards for Excellence in Thesis Research in Special Operations and Irregular Warfare or Security, Stabilization, Transition, and Reconstruction, and the Naval Postgraduate School Superior Service Award. Lieutenant Jason Wells. Major Damon Carl Voorhees, U.S. Air Force, recommended to receive with distinction. Mr. Thomas Offerdahl, civilian. Candidates for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Far East, Southeast Asia, and Pacific, Major Donald Kim, U.S. Army. Candidates for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Western Hemisphere, Captain John Michael Mahler, U.S. Marine Corps. Lieutenant Jason Moody, also recognized for an outstanding thesis. Candidates for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Europe and Eurasia, Lieutenant Darren Christopher Dean. Lieutenant Jeremy Mears. Major Erica Kasperzak, U.S. Air Force. Major Dustin Olson, U.S. Air Force, also recommended to receive with distinction. Major Paul Roman Pollock, U.S. Air Force, also received 2 awards, the Outstanding U.S. Air Force Graduate Award, Department of National Security Affairs, and recommended to receive with distinction. Candidate for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Stabilization and Reconstruction, Captain Hussein Yiğit, Turkish Army, also received the International Student Award for Excellence in Regional or Security Studies. Candidate for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Defense Decision Making and Planning, Mr. Mikhail Alexa, Ministry of Defense, Slovak Republic. Candidates for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Homeland Security and Defense, Mr. Robert Henry Schultz, Jr., Navy civilian. Candidates for the degree Master of Arts in Security Studies, Homeland Security and Defense, Captain Brian Marsh, Georgia National Guard. Commander William Gamble Dwyer III, United States Coast Guard. Assistant Fire Chief William Abbott, Tempe Fire Department, Arizona. Sergeant Chad Baker, Orange County Sheriff's Department, California. Ms. Catherine Bernstein, California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Chief of Police Fred Bordalo, Guam Police Department. Mr. Daniel Kane, Oregon Public Health Division, also recognized for an outstanding thesis. Sheriff David Clark, Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. Captain Jeffrey Cole, Denver Fire Department. Mr. Michael Dayton, California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Mr. Judson Dangler, United States Secret Service, also received the Philip Zimbardo Award. Ms. Susan Millard Dixon, Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Police Officer 2, Hillary G. Downey, LA Police Department. Mr. Gregory Eaton, Federal Emergency Management Agency. Captain Stacy Elizabeth Gerlich, Los Angeles Fire Department. Deputy Inspector Jason Herta, New York City Police Department. Ms. Maria Lipscomb, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. Mrs. Margaret Muir, Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. Captain Jeffrey Nelson, Contra Costa County, Office of the Sheriff, California. Mr. Daniel O'Connor, Department of Homeland Security, also received the Curtis H. Butch Straub Achievement Award. Lieutenant Kimberly Owens, Dallas Police Department. Captain Kimberly Peterson, Fremont Police Department, California. EM5 Division Chief Jonathan Pistilli, Fire Department of New York. Captain Brian Ravert, Amtrak Police Department, Philadelphia. Mr. Wayne Ricard, Federal Disaster Recovery Coordinator, FEMA Region 6. Mr. William Schultz, Arizona Division of Emergency Management. Ms. Teresa Smith, Chief Performance Management and Analysis, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Fire Paramedic Services Chief Michael Touchstone, Philadelphia Fire Department. Captain Pat Walsh, Portland Police Bureau, Oregon. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Electrical Engineering, Captain Laurel Joseph Atkins, U.S. Marine Corps. Major Kevin D. Shepard, U.S. Marine Corps. Lieutenant Guillermo Baltra, Chilean Navy, also received the degree Master of Science in Computer Science. Lieutenant Alan Patrick Kaboing. Lieutenant Kendra Deptula. Lieutenant Timothy Michael Dunton. Lieutenant Timothy Brian Policar. Lieutenant Commander Zachariah Hunter Stiles also received the Space and Naval Warfare Systems Command Award in Electronic Systems Engineering. Ms. Heng Ying Wei, Defense Science and Technology Agency, Singapore. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Engineering Science, Electrical Engineering, Mr. Wang Chia Siren, Defense Science and Technology Agency, Singapore, also received the John McReynolds Wozencraft Electrical and Computer Engineering Academic Honor Award. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering, Lieutenant Russell Sean Canty, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Jacob Russell. Lieutenant Andrew Streenan also received the Submarine Force Undersea Warfare Curriculum Award. Lieutenant Gary Kim, U.S. Coast Guard. Mr. Chuan Jun Wei, Singapore Technologies Aerospace, recommended to receive with distinction. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Engineering Science, Mechanical Engineering, Major Nia Young Shin, Singapore Air Force. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Astronautical Science, Mr. Vidur Kashish, Naval Postgraduate School. Mr. Octavio Rico Perez, Naval Postgraduate School. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Space Systems Operations, Captain Miguel Alvarez, U.S. Marine Corps, also received 4 awards. Received the degree Master of Science in Applied Physics, Space Systems Operation Award for Academic Excellence, recommended to receive with distinction in both degrees, and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Not to be outdone, Captain Fritz Schultes, U.S. Army, received 5 awards. Received the degree Master of Science in Applied Physics, received the Association of the United States Army General Joseph W. Stilwell Chapter Award for Outstanding Army Student, the Space Systems Operation Award for Academic Excellence, recommended to receive with distinction, and was also recognized for an outstanding thesis. Major Brian Slossman, U.S. Army, received the degree Master of Science in Electrical Engineering, the Admiral William Adger Moffett Space Systems Award, and was recommended to receive with distinction. Lieutenant Commander Bryce William Donovan. Lieutenant Commander Ricardo Farah. Commander Samuel Marshall, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Commander Rashonda McKee. Lieutenant Evan Scott. Lieutenant Jeffrey Wilcox was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Captain Priscilla Marie Adams, U.S. Air Force. Captain Matthew D. Bueller, U.S. Air Force. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Meteorology and Physical Oceanography, Lieutenant Commander Pamela Teledo. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Physical Oceanography, Lieutenant Jacob Fisher. Ladies and gentlemen, I wonder if you notice the resemblance of the 2 men on stage at this moment. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Engineering Acoustic, Lieutenant Richard Hunt. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Physics, Commander Jonathan Van Slyke. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Applied Physics, Lieutenant Mikalis Savas, Hellenic Navy. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Applied Mathematics, Mr. Lee Soo An Darrell, Singapore Technologies, Singapore, also received the Naval Postgraduate School Outstanding Academic Achievement Award for international students, recommended to receive with distinction, and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Operations Research, Major Tobias Tremmel, German Army, received the Naval Postgraduate School Outstanding Academic Achievement Award for international students, recommended to receive with distinction, and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Crossing the stage now is Lieutenant Aaron Baker. Commander William Bard also received the Surface Navy Association's Award for Excellence in Surface Warfare Research. Commander Chuck Burton. Commander Scott Campbell. Lieutenant Ashley Helen Carline. Lieutenant Commander Duncan Robert Ellis received 4 awards: the Monterey Council Navy League Award for highest academic achievement, the CNO's Award for excellence in operations research, recommended to receive with distinction, and also recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Commander William Evans will also retire today after 24 years of service. Lieutenant Elizabeth Diane Farrar, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Bradford Foster. Lieutenant John Paul Harrop. Lieutenant Commander Vikas Jasuva. Lieutenant James Robert C. Kofi. Lieutenant Catherine Susan Long. Lieutenant Commander Ryan McLaughlin also received the Military Operations Research Society Stephen A. Tisdale Graduate Research Award and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Commander Kevin Patrick McMullen. Lieutenant Commander Matthew Mishagan. Lieutenant Commander Andrew James Oswald. Lieutenant Commander Matthew John Tabor. Lieutenant Roger Young. Captain Philip Zlatson, Israeli Air Force, recommended to receive with distinction. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Human Systems Integration, Lieutenant Jason Edward Bilbrow. Lieutenant James Damon Davey. Lieutenant Gregory Gale. Lieutenant Danielle Matsumoto, recommended to receive with distinction. Lieutenant Commander Frode Mjelde, Norwegian Navy, received the Monterey Kiwanis Club Outstanding International Student Award and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Candidates for the degree Master of Human Systems Integration, Ms. Catherine Kramer Ferguson, Department of Defense, Alexandria, Virginia. Mr. Mark George Ferguson, Department of Defense, Washington, D.C. Ms. Elizabeth Jansen, Department of Defense, Quantico, Virginia. Ms. Sarah McClutchy, Department of Defense, Quantico, Virginia. Ms. Deborah Swain, Department of Defense Contractor, Sterling Heights, Michigan, recommended to receive with distinction. Candidate for the degree Master of Systems Analysis, Lieutenant Sean Purdy. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Systems Engineering, ME5 Shio Boon Chu Winson, Singapore Army. Captain Lim Chifeng, Singapore Army. ME5 So Zi Shuang, Singapore Army. Mr. Aaron Ming Chan, U.S. Army Research, Development, and Engineering Command. Mr. Dennis Lornaria Gambin, Northrop Grumman Marine Systems. Ms. Jamesia Shanti Hobbs, Marine Corps Systems Command. Mr. Kevin Scott Hovis, Marine Corps Systems Command. Mr. Christopher Ironhill, Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division. Ms. Michelle L. LaFleur, Naval Sea Systems Command, Norfolk Naval Shipyard. Mr. Darren Tien Lee, Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division. Mrs. Angela Joy Miller, Naval Air Systems Command. Mr. Joseph Terrell McPherson, Marine Corps Systems Command. Mr. Matthew Scott Podolitz, Northrop Grumman Marine Systems. Mr. John Allen Pomfret, Marine Corps Systems Command, also received the Meyer Award for Outstanding Student in Systems Engineering Distance Learning. Mr. Nam Toy Train, Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division. Mrs. Erin Wortley Valliere, Marine Corps Systems Command. Mr. Adam J. Wilk, Lockheed Martin Corporation. Mr. Lee Guan Hock, Singapore Technologies Marine Limited. Mr. Leo Valentine, Singapore Technologies Engineering Kinetics, recommended to receive with distinction. Mr. Teo Han Chin, Singapore Aerospace Limited, recommended to receive with distinction. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Engineering System, Mr. Chow Wen Chong Julian, Singapore Defense Science and Technology Agency. Mrs. Diana Tran Lee, Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Systems Engineering Management, Lieutenant Mark Morgan. Captain Dustin Bruce Jefferson, U.S. Air Force, also received the Meyer Award for Outstanding Student in Systems Engineering Distance Learning. Captain Stephen Dwayne Locker, U.S. Air Force. Mr. Matthew Everson, Naval Air Systems Command. Chief Machinist Mate David Fannings, U.S. Navy, retired. Mr. Thomas M. Goff, Naval Sea Systems Command. Mr. Nam Wong Chong, Naval Sea Systems Command. Mr. Paul Gehring Walter, Space and Naval Warfare Systems Center Atlantic, also received the Meyer Award for Outstanding Student in Engineering Distance Learning. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Computer Science, Major Luke Coyle, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Tim Garcia, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Samantha Graves, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Matthew Wendt, U.S. Marine Corps, also recognized for an outstanding thesis. Captain Wong Wai Kiat, Singapore Army. Lieutenant Richard Battle. Lieutenant Vasilios Karayanakis, Hellenic Navy. Lieutenant Arthamar Mango Singh, U.S. Navy. Ms. Pua Yi Ling, Singapore Technologies Electronics, Singapore. Lieutenant Daniel Rame, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Panayotis Skinash, Hellenic Navy. Lieutenant Christos Vasilokostas, Hellenic Navy. It's a tough one. Lieutenant Arts F, the 4th. Lieutenant Chad McDowell. Mr. Leon Ching, Defense Science and Technology Agency, Singapore. Mr. Glenn Henderson, Vista Research Incorporated. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Modeling, Virtual Environments, and Simulation. Captain Juan Carlos Adal, U.S. Marine Corps. Lieutenant Commander Georgios Demetrio, Hellenic Navy, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Captain Regan King, U.S. Marine Corps. Major James Reynolds, U.S. Marine Corps, also received 4 awards. The Gary Kildall Award for Computing Innovation, Commander George L. Phillips Modeling, Virtual Environments and Simulation Award, recommended to receive with distinction and recognized for an outstanding thesis. Captain Jonathan Richardson, U.S. Marine Corps. Major Craig Smith, U.S. Marine Corps, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Major Floyd Yates, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. Major James Teeters II, U.S. Army. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Software Engineering. Mr. James S. O'Rourke, U.S. Army Communications and Electronics Command, Software Engineering Center. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Information Technology Management. Captain Austin Bonner, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Melvin Birch Bynum, U.S. Marine Corps. Major John Hoffner, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Scott Hummer, U.S. Marine Corps, recommended to receive with distinction. Captain Charles Ibachuan II, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Joshua Catt, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain James Maestrom, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps, received 3 awards. Received the Master of Business Administration and Information Systems Management Award, the Rear Admiral Grace Murray Hopper Information Technology Management Award, and recommended to receive with distinction. Major Stephen Mays, U.S. Marine Corps. Major Frank Sierra, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain David Simming, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain John Sims, U.S. Marine Corps, recommended to receive with distinction and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Captain William Travis, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Mahmoud Dumlupinar, Turkish Army. Lieutenant Commander Eid Al-Qahtani, Saudi Arabian Navy, received the degree Master of Business Administration in Information Systems Management, recommended to receive with distinction, and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Commander Fahad bin Hawalmil, Saudi Arabian Navy, received the degree Master of Business Administration in Information Systems Management, recommended to receive with distinction, and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Lieutenant Commander Michael Kenny, recognized for an outstanding thesis, and he also has here, he received the Outstanding Attendance Award, Gold Star. Lieutenant Commander Raymond Kimmel. Lieutenant Alistar McLean. Lieutenant Commander Eric LaSalle, U.S. Coast Guard, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Candidate for the degree Master of Science in Remote Sensing Intelligence, Mr. Paul Baskell, Department of Defense, recommended to receive with distinction. Mr. Cody Lanning, Department of Defense. Mr. Scott Phillips, Department of Defense. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Information Warfare Systems Engineering, Lieutenant Commander Max Gietler IV, received 3 awards. The CNO's Information Warfare Award, recommended to receive with distinction, and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Major Ola Larsson, Swedish Army, received the degree Master of Science in Applied Mathematics and was recognized for an outstanding thesis. Major Brent Stephen Molaski, U.S. Marine Corps, also received the degree Master of Science in Information Operations. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Electronic Warfare Systems Engineering. Lieutenant Abdulaziz A. Aladali, Saudi Arabian Navy. Lieutenant Chen Han Rei, Taiwanese Navy. Lieutenant J.G. Yavuz Sagir, Turkish Navy. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Cyber Systems and Operations, Captain Joseph Billingsley, U.S. Army. Lieutenant Christopher Callahan. Lieutenant Hillary Lamb, recommended to receive with distinction. Lieutenant Commander Aaron Littlejohn. Lieutenant Ahab Makhlouf. Lieutenant Christopher Mullen. Lieutenant Commander Scott Roper. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Applied Cyber Operations, Chief Petty Officer Javon Burden. Chief Petty Officer Dayan Donchev. Chief Petty Officer Rachel Doucet. Petty Officer First Class Thomas Scoff. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Program Management, Megan N. Dodge, Department of Defense, Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland. Mr. Robert F. McKelvey III, Department of Defense, Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland. Mr. Matthew B. Parsons, Department of Defense, Redstone Arsenal, Alabama. Candidates for the degree Master of Science in Contract Management, Mrs. Virginia Babcock, Department of Defense, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, also received 3 awards. The NPS Outstanding Academic Achievement Award for DoD student, the Louis D. Liskin Award for Excellence in Business and Public Policy, and recommended to receive with distinction. Mr. Elisban U. Rodriguez, NASA, Moffett Field, California. Mr. Matthew J. White, Department of Defense, NPS, California. Candidates for the degree Executive Masters in Business Administration, Commander Samuel Bryant. Commander Brian Downey, recommended to receive with distinction. Commander Stephen Fuselier. Lieutenant Benjamin Geib. Lieutenant Joseph Hyde. Commander Jim Henley. Captain Brian McInnes. Lieutenant Commander Brian Merritt. Nice. Lieutenant Travis Phillips. Lieutenant Andrew Schaff. Lieutenant Kirby Williams II. Candidates for the degree Master of Business Administration. Commander Ijaz Ahmad, Pakistan Navy. Lieutenant Willie Jordan, U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Tyrasha Bowman. Lieutenant Commander Select Willie Hunt, recognized for an outstanding thesis. Please join me in giving all our graduates a well-deserved round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's graduation ceremony. And on behalf of the President and all of us at NPS, I'd like to once again thank you for being here today. We offer our sincere appreciation to NPS Color Guard and, of course, to the Del Monte Brass. Please remain clear of the aisles until the platform party and faculty have departed. President Tai cordially invites graduates, faculty, and guests to a reception in honor of today's graduates in the Barbara McNitt Ballroom of Herman Hall immediately following the ceremony. Chaplain Riley will now give the benediction.
Let us pray. Most holy and gracious one, I thank you again for the wisdom you have granted to those who seek, and especially for each new graduate gathered before us. May the instruction of their professors and the love of their families and friends continue to strengthen them in the days ahead as they continue to serve a cause greater than themselves with all honor, courage of conviction, and commitment to stay true to their highest principles. As our graduates mark this new milestone in their personal and professional lives, may your understanding be with them. Lead them into positions of leadership and influence for the good, with the knowledge and insights gained here at MPS. As we now leave this great hall with a renewed sense of purpose and direction, whether graduate or student, faculty or staff, family or friend, may your peace be with us, may your grace shine in us, and may your strength be evident in all that we do. I ask this now in your holy name. Amen.
Oh, you're so good. We're almost there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Graduates, you're dismissed.